The unexpected visitors. Professor Reginald Hawthorne had been having an extraordinarily ordinary Tuesday until 3:42 p.m., when his life took a turn toward the impossible. He sat in his small university office, surrounded by stacks of student papers on probability mathematics, work that he found fascinating even though his colleagues considered it impractical. At 42, Reginald was the very definition of unremarkable, brown hair retreating strategically from his forehead, a wardrobe consisting entirely of tweed jackets with leather patches, and a lifestyle so predictable that his goldfish, Sir Isaac Salmon, had better social prospects. The first sign that Tuesday would be different came with a sound like 1,000 library cards being shuffled at once. The air in his office shimmered, and suddenly 3 beings materialized in front of his desk. Reginald spilled his tea across his lap, barely noticing the hot liquid soaking through his trousers. The beings before him defied description, tall, luminescent, with features that seemed to shift between familiar and utterly alien. The lead figure wore what appeared to be a necktie made of liquid copper. "Professor Hawthorne," the being said, its voice carrying harmonics that made Reginald's filing cabinet resonate. "We are chronological anomalies." "Good heavens," Reginald managed, setting down his empty teacup with shaking hands. "How did you get in here? And what are you?" "As for how we got here," the being continued, "that would require explaining several branches of physics that won't be discovered for another 453 years. The short answer is, sideways." "Sideways?" Reginald repeated flatly. "Through time," the being clarified. "Which brings us to why we're here. You see, in approximately 14 minutes, something is going to happen that wasn't supposed to happen for another millennium. A dragon is going to appear on Earth." Reginald blinked several times, wondering if the chemistry department had accidentally contaminated the tea supply again. "A dragon? Like in fairy tales?" "Oh no," the being replied with what might have been a smile, if its face weren't arranged quite so oddly. "Nothing so primitive. This is a Draconia stellaris, a space dragon. Quite sentient, highly intelligent, and currently extremely distressed because her youngling is dying." "A space dragon," Reginald repeated slowly, as if saying it carefully might make it make more sense. "Yes. And the reason we're telling you this is because, according to our historical records, you're the one who saves it." "I'm the one who, I'm sorry, but I think you must have the wrong person. I'm a mathematician. I don't save things. The last thing I saved was a document on my computer, and even that crashed before I could print it." The being consulted what appeared to be a watch but might have been a small galaxy strapped to its wrist. "We're running out of time for explanations. Just remember, when she arrives, show no fear. And whatever you do, don't mention the number 42. "What? Why not? What's wrong with?" But before Reginald could finish his question, the beings vanished with the same library shuffling sound, leaving only the faint scent of cinnamon and mathematics in the air. Reginald sat in stunned silence, staring at the space where his impossible visitors had been. He glanced at his watch, 3:43 p.m. 13 minutes to go. He considered calling someone, but who? The police? "Hello, yes, I'd like to report some time travelers who say a space dragon is about to appear in my office." "The University Counseling Service?" "I think I'm having a breakdown involving tea and temporal anomalies." Instead, he simply waited. What else could a reasonable man do? At exactly 3:56 p.m., reality hiccuped. The dragon's plea. The tear in reality wasn't metaphorical, it was an actual rent in the fabric of spacetime, bordered by sparking, frayed edges that crackled with impossible energy. Through this cosmic wound emerged the most magnificent creature Reginald had ever seen. The dragon was enormous, filling most of his modest office and forcing him to press back against his bookshelf. Her scales were primarily midnight blue that seemed to absorb light, but brilliant orange-red highlights glowed like embers along her spine and wings. The wings themselves were translucent in places, revealing what looked like nebulae and star formations within the membrane. Her head was crowned with spikes that occasionally flickered with blue electrical energy. But it was her eyes, pools of amber intelligence, that fixed on Reginald with unmistakable desperation. In her front claws, cradled with surprising gentleness, was a smaller version of herself. The youngling's scales were dull, its star-speckled wings limp, its eyes half-closed with sickness. Even to Reginald's inexperienced gaze, it was clearly dying. The dragon mother lowered her massive head until her snout was less than a meter from Reginald's face. He could feel heat radiating from her, not unpleasant, but intense, like standing near a bonfire. The time traveler's advice echoed in his mind, show no fear. This was considerably easier said than done when faced with teeth the size of kitchen knives. Reginald stood frozen in his tweed jacket and corduroy trousers, an outfit that had served him well for faculty meetings but seemed woefully inadequate for interspecies first contact. The dragon scrutinized him, then slowly extended her front limbs, offering the sick youngling to him. When Reginald didn't immediately respond, the dragon made a sound like distant thunder, a growl of impatience or desperation that rattled his office windows. Swallowing hard, Reginald stepped forward and carefully took the baby dragon into his arms. It was surprisingly light for its size, as if its bones were hollow, and it radiated warmth like a living hot water bottle. The youngling opened its eyes slightly, regarding Reginald with a gaze that somehow conveyed both ancient wisdom and childlike vulnerability. Reginald stammered, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not sure what you expect me to do. The mother dragon tilted her head, then reached one massive claw toward his desk with delicacy that seemed impossible for such a large creature. She touched his computer keyboard, and suddenly the screen filled with complex mathematical equations and diagrams. Reginald stared at the display, his academic instincts overriding his fear. These are probability matrices, he murmured, shifting the youngling in his arms to get a better look. But they're configured in a way I've never seen before. They're describing biological systems using quantum variables. He looked up at the dragon. This is about your child's illness, isn't it? You're showing me the problem. The dragon made a sound that might have been affirmation. But why me? I'm just a theoretical mathematician. I work with concepts, not dragons. The mother dragon touched the screen again, and the equation shifted, revealing a paper Reginald had published 3 years ago, Theoretical Applications of Nonlinear Probability in Complex Systems. It was perhaps his most notable work, though it had been largely dismissed by his colleagues as interesting but impractical. You think my work can help your youngling? Reginald asked incredulously. The dragon nodded, a surprisingly human gesture that made Reginald wonder just how intelligent these creatures truly were. Looking down at the sick dragon child in his arms, then at the impossible equations on his screen, Reginald felt something shift inside him. For the first time in his life, his impractical mathematics might actually matter. Well, he said softly, I suppose we'd better get to work then. The mathematical solution. For the next 6 hours, Reginald worked with an intensity he'd never experienced before. The dragon youngling lay on a makeshift bed of couch cushions, its breathing shallow and irregular. The mother dragon had coiled herself around his office as much as the space allowed, watching every calculation with anxious amber eyes. The equations were unlike anything in conventional mathematics. They described biological functions as probability clouds, where cellular behavior followed quantum mechanical principles rather than classical biology. It was as if the dragon's very existence operated on rules that wouldn't be discovered by human science for centuries. The problem, Reginald muttered, adjusting his glasses as he worked through another calculation, is that your species exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Your youngling isn't just sick, it's experiencing probability cascade failure. The mother dragon made a low, questioning sound. Reginald stood up, stretching his aching back. Think of it this way, imagine if your existence was like a song played on multiple instruments at once. Right now, those instruments are falling out of harmony. If we can't resynchronize them. He didn't need to finish. The dragon's sorrowful expression said she understood. Hours passed. Reginald consumed an alarming amount of tea and covered 3 whiteboards with increasingly complex equations. The youngling's condition continued to deteriorate, its scales losing their luster, its breathing becoming more labored. Then, at 2:17 a.m., Reginald made a breakthrough. "Wait," he said, nearly dropping his cup. "I've been thinking about this wrong. It's not about fixing the probability cascade, it's about providing an anchor point. A stable quantum reference that allows the biological systems to recalibrate themselves." He turned to the mother dragon, excitement overcoming his exhaustion. "I need to ask you something that might sound strange. Do you dream?" The dragon tilted her massive head, considering the question, then nodded slowly. "And when you dream, do you sometimes dream of places that exist in other realities? Other possible worlds?" Another nod, more emphatic this time. Reginald grinned, the first genuine smile he'd worn in years. "Then I know what to do." Working feverishly, he restructured the equations one final time. Instead of trying to force the youngling's biology back into a single stable state, he created a mathematical framework that would allow it to exist comfortably across multiple probability states, just as its species had evolved to do. "It's like tuning a piano," he explained as he input the final calculations. "We're not changing the notes, we're just making sure they're all in harmony." The computer screen filled with a complex wave pattern that seemed to pulse with its own life. Reginald looked at the mother dragon. "I need you to do something. Think about your youngling, not as it is now, but as it should be. Healthy, full of energy, ready to explore the cosmos. Can you do that?" The dragon closed her eyes, and something remarkable happened. The spikes on her head began to glow more brightly, and gradually, the entire office filled with a warm, golden light. The air itself seemed to shimmer with possibilities. The youngling stirred in its makeshift bed, its eyes opening fully for the first time since its arrival. Color began to return to its scales, and its wings, previously limp and lifeless, began to move with growing strength. Slowly, carefully, the young dragon sat up. It looked around the office with clear, bright eyes, then made a sound like tinkling bells, a sound of pure joy. The mother dragon's roar of relief shook the building's foundations, but it was a sound of triumph, not distress. She gently nuzzled her youngling, tears of liquid starlight streaming down her massive snout. Reginald slumped into his chair, emotionally and physically drained but filled with a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he'd ever experienced. He had done it. His impractical mathematics had saved a life, had healed a creature that shouldn't even exist according to Earth's science. The mother dragon turned to him and, in perfect English, spoke for the first time. "Thank you, Professor Hawthorne. You have saved more than just one life today. You have saved the future of 2 species." As the dimensional tier began to reopen, preparing to take the dragons home, Reginald realized that his ordinary Tuesday had become the most extraordinary day in the history of human-dragon relations. The galactic connection. 2 weeks after the dragon encounter, Reginald thought his life had returned to normal. He'd submitted a carefully sanitized report about theoretical applications of multidimensional probability theory to the university, filed the whole experience under clearly impossible but somehow happened, and tried to get back to grading papers. Then Finn Cooper arrived. Unlike the time travelers, Finn used the door. He knocked politely and waited for permission to enter, though the lightweight armor he wore and the careful way he moved suggested he was accustomed to more dramatic entrances. "Professor Hawthorne?" Finn asked, removing his hood to reveal close-cropped dark hair and a thin scar running from temple to jaw. "I'm here about the dragons." Reginald nearly choked on his tea. "I'm sorry, what dragons?" "I don't know anything about any dragons. Certainly not space dragons that definitely didn't appear in my office 2 weeks ago." Finn smiled knowingly. "The Draconius stellaris. Mother and youngling. The child was suffering from probability cascade failure, which you solved using your work on nonlinear probability matrices." Reginald set down his cup very carefully. "Who are you?" "Finn Cooper. I'm a biological specimen collector for the Galactic Repository of Unique Life Forms. He paused. I'm also from about 50 years in your future. Oh, said Reginald faintly. Another time traveler. Lovely. And I suppose you have another impossible task for me? Finn leaned forward. Actually, I'm here because of what you've already done. Your success with the dragon youngling has had consequences. What kind of consequences? The good kind, mostly. Word has spread throughout the galactic community about a human mathematician who can heal probability-based illnesses. You've become something of a legend. Reginald stared at him. A legend? I'm a middle-aged professor who talks to a goldfish. Who also saved the life of a creature whose species is crucial to maintaining cosmic stability, Finn replied. The Draconia stellaris aren't just dragons, Professor. They're living links between dimensions. When one dies, the barriers between realities weaken. Your youngling wasn't just sick, it was a keystone in the fabric of spacetime itself. He reached into his armor and withdrew a small, glowing creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a monkey. This is a feldrake. The last of its kind. It's dying from the same type of probability cascade failure. Reginald looked at the small creature, then at Finn. You want me to save it too? It's not just me. The entire galactic community is hoping you will. You see, Professor, you've started something. Your method, using probability mathematics to stabilize quantum biology, it's revolutionary. We've identified 17 species that could be saved using variations of your technique. 17 species? Reginald's voice cracked slightly. For a start. The universe is vast, Professor Hawthorne, and full of life forms that exist on the edges of possibility. Many of them are dying because their unique biological systems can't adapt to changing cosmic conditions. You've shown that mathematics can be the bridge between the impossible and the possible. Reginald looked down at the feldrake, which gazed up at him with eyes that held the wisdom of an ancient species. Despite its diminutive size, he could sense the same kind of complexity he'd encountered with the dragon youngling, biological systems operating on principles that transcended ordinary science. If I do this, he said slowly, what happens to my normal life? My teaching, my research? Finn grinned. Professor, with respect, was your normal life really that fulfilling? When was the last time you felt like your work truly mattered? Reginald considered this. His colleagues had always dismissed his theoretical work as impractical. His students found his lectures dry. Even Sir Isaac Salmon seemed unimpressed by his conversational attempts. Then he remembered the moment when the dragon youngling had opened its eyes, fully alert and healthy, and the sound of its mother's joyful roar. He remembered feeling, for the first time in his life, that his mind had been used for something truly meaningful. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. Come with me, Finn said. There's a ship waiting. We'll start with the feldrake, then move on to the other species. Think of it as a sabbatical, a chance to apply your mathematics to problems that really matter. Reginald stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the university campus where he'd spent the last 20 years in comfortable obscurity. Everything was predictable, safe, and utterly unremarkable. He turned back to Finn, who was gently stroking the feldrake's small head. How long would I be gone? Time is relative when you're traveling between dimensions, Finn replied. But I promise you this, you'll return a different man than you left. The question is, are you ready to become who you're meant to be? Reginald looked at his desk, covered with papers on theoretical mathematics that no one cared about. Then he looked at the feldrake, whose species' entire future might depend on his decision. What about Sir Isaac Salmon? He asked. We'll find someone to take care of him, Finn assured him. The university custodian loves aquarium fish. Reginald made his choice. Very well, Mr. Cooper. Let's save some impossible creatures. The universal truth. 3 years later, or was it 30? Time moved strangely when traveling between dimensions, Professor Reginald Hawthorne stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Research Station Harmony, watching a nebula birth new stars in the distance. He wore comfortable travel clothes now, practical pants and a jacket that could adapt to different atmospheric conditions, though he'd kept one tweed jacket with elbow patches for sentimental reasons. Beside him, the Feldrake, now fully grown and healthy, perched on his shoulder, its iridescent scales catching the starlight. It had been the first of many successes. Over the years, Reginald had developed his probability mathematics into an entire new field, quantum biological harmonics. Professor? Finn approached, looking older but more content than the day they'd met. He now served as Reginald's field partner and closest friend. The Council wants to see you. The Galactic Council meeting was held in a vast chamber that defied geometry, with representatives from hundreds of species attending either in person or via dimensional projection. Reginald had grown accustomed to such impossibilities, though he still felt a thrill when a crystalline entity from the Andromeda Galaxy spoke in harmonics only his universal translator could interpret. Professor Hawthorne, the council speaker, a being of pure energy contained within a humanoid shell, addressed him. Your work has exceeded our most optimistic projections. 43 species have been saved using your methods. Several that were thought extinct have been restored. You have quite literally rewritten the rules of biological possibility. Reginald shifted uncomfortably. Despite years of praise, he remained modest at heart. I've simply applied mathematical principles to problems that needed solving. The real heroes are the creatures themselves, they find ways to heal once given the proper framework. Which brings us to our final proposition, the speaker continued. We want to establish the Hawthorne Institute for Quantum Biology on your home planet. Earth would become the universe's center for studying and healing probability-based life forms. The chamber fell silent. Even through the translator, Reginald could sense the magnitude of what was being proposed. You want to make Earth a galactic medical center? He asked. More than that, another council member, the dragon mother he'd first helped, now bearing the title of Stellar Ambassador, spoke up. We want to make it a bridge between dimensions. Your species has something unique, Professor. The ability to see patterns where others see chaos. To find harmony in discord. Humanity doesn't just save impossible creatures, you make the impossible possible. Reginald thought about his old life, the small office, the dismissive colleagues, the goldfish who never talked back. Then he looked around the chamber at beings from across the galaxy, all of whom owed their continued existence to mathematical equations that had once been considered impractical. The humans would need time to adjust, he said carefully. First contact with one dragon was overwhelming enough. Suddenly becoming a hub for galactic medical tourism might be a bit much. We would introduce changes gradually, the speaker assured him. Over the next 50 years. And you would oversee the transition, training the next generation of quantum biologists. What do you say, Professor? Finn asked quietly. Ready to bring the impossible home? Reginald smiled, remembering a Tuesday afternoon when his greatest concern had been whether to grade papers or assign everyone a B. Now he stood at the crossroads of species, holding knowledge that could reshape the universe's understanding of life itself. There's just one condition, he said. I want to bring Sir Isaac Salmon to the new institute. He's been my longest companion, and if we're going to house impossible creatures, we should start with the most ordinary ones too. The council erupted in what his translator interpreted as laughter from dozens of different species. Of course, Professor, the Dragon Ambassador said warmly. Even the most extraordinary adventures need ordinary anchors. As Reginald looked out at the stars, he realized that sometimes the most important discoveries begin with the simplest questions. Like what to do when impossible visitors appear in your office on a Tuesday afternoon. He had started as a man who studied probability. Now he was someone who created it. And in a universe full of impossible creatures, that made him the most wonderfully ordinary extraordinary person of all. The Feldrake on his shoulder chirped happily, and Reginald reached up to stroke its scaled head. Together, they watched the birth of new stars and the endless possibilities they represented. Back on Earth, in a small university office, a new professor had just been hired to teach theoretical mathematics. On her desk sat a bowl with a goldfish named Sir Isaac Salmon Jr., who was already proving to be an excellent listener. The universe, as Reginald had learned, had a wonderful sense of continuity. And in the vast expanse of space, dragons soared between dimensions, young feldrakes played in probability clouds, and somewhere in between impossible and inevitable, mathematics solved the problems that mattered most. The end.